The sun's come up over 1,000 times. A number of young people fell in love and got married. Almost everybody in the world gets married. In our town, there are hardly any exceptions. Most everybody in the world climbs into their graves married. The first act was called daily life. This act is called love and marriage. There is another act coming after this, and I reckon you can guess what it is about. It is 3 years later, 1904, July 7th, just after high school commencement. Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webbs come downstairs to make breakfast just as though it is an ordinary day.
Well, Ma, the day has come. You're losing one of your daughters.
Frank, shut up. I don't feel like crying every second. Sit down and drink your coffee.
George is shaving right now, except he doesn't have amazing facial hair such as I. I think he said I do to the mirror, but it didn't sound too convincing to me.
Frank, I don't know how he'll get along. I've held his hand since he was a baby. He's too young, Frank. He's too young. Emily won't be able to take care of him.
Remember our wedding day, Julia?
Don't even, Frank.
Thought I'd make a mistake for sure. When you were coming down that aisle, I thought you were the most perfect girl I'd ever seen. Except, never seen you before because we had one of those arranged marriages.
And how do you think I felt? Weddings are awful things. I've made something for you.
Wow, Julia! Irish soda bread!
I just had to make something.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
I couldn't sleep at all thinking about this wedding.
Yes, I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man. That great gangling thing.
Yes, people are meant to go through life 2 by 2. It isn't natural to be lonesome.
Julia, do you know one of these things I was scared of when I married you?
Oh, go along with you.
I was afraid we wouldn't have material for conversation more than last a few weeks. I was afraid we'd run out and eat our meals in silence. That's a fact. But now we talk about everything.
Well, good weather, bad weather. It ain't very choice, but I always find something to say. Do you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
No, only day of the year Rebecca hasn't been managing everybody else's business up there. She's hiding in her room. I got the impression she's crying.
Lord's sake, she's got to stop. Rebecca, Rebecca, come down and eat your breakfast.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
George Gibbs, where are you going?
Across the street to see him.
Now, George, put on your rain boots. It's raining cats and dogs outside.
Mom, it's just a walk across the block.
George, you'll catch a death of a cold.
George, do as your mother tells you.
I'll be back in a minute.
George, what are you doing here?
Oh, I just want to see Emily before the wedding.
Are you nuts? You can't see her before the wedding. It's bad luck.
That's just a superstition. Morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
You don't believe in that superstition, do you?
Well, there's a lot of common sense in superstition, George. Millions have followed it. Why do you two want to be the first one to mess it up?
Now I'll tell you what I'll do. You come in here with me, sit down, and I'll talk to you while you drink a cup of coffee.
All right.
I'm going to wake up.
All right.
George, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good.
Mr. Webb, what's the point in that superstition?
Well, you see, her head's full of worries. She's worrying about her clothes and all that.
Well, yeah, I never thought of that.
A girl's apt to be a mite nervous on her wedding day.
I wish a fellow could get married without marching up and down and all that.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George, but it hasn't been any use. It's the women folk who built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, the women have it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding. George, all those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure that the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh yes, oh yes. Don't you misunderstand me, my boy. Marriage is a wonderful thing, and you don't forget that, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I'd been in college and I'd taken a little time to get settled, but Mrs. Webb, she wasn't much older than what Emily is. Oh, age hasn't much to do with it, George.
What are you guys talking about? The incubator again? I thought we would be talking about something important.
If you want to give the boys some good advice, I'll go upstairs and leave you alone with him.
George, Emily's got to come downstairs to eat her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she doesn't want anyone to lay her eyes on her. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
George and Emily are going to show you now the conversation they had when they first knew that, as the saying goes, they were meant for one another. But before they do that, I want you to try and remember what it was like to have been very young, and particularly the days when you were first in love, when you were like a person sleepwalking, and you didn't quite see the street you were in, but you didn't quite hear everything that was said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that, please? They will be getting out of school at 3 o'clock. George and Emily have just won class elections. I don't have to tell you how important that is. Yes, they're coming down Main Street now.
Hi, Marissa.
Hey, Emily, can I carry your books on for you?
Okay, sure.
Emily, I've been wondering, why have you been treating me so weird?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot. And since baseball season was coming, you used to ignore me and the family. I didn't like that.
Well, I'm glad you said it, Emily. I've never thought such a thing. I guess it's hard for a guy to not see flaws in himself.
I can always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
Emily, I don't think it's possible for a man to be perfect.
Well, my father is, and your father is me too.
Well, I feel like it's the other way around, that men aren't naturally good, but girls are.
Well, you might as well know now that girls aren't perfect. It's very hard to be perfect, actually.
Emily,
Now, I can't see it's not the truth at all, and I suddenly feel it's not important anymore.
Emily, do you want to go get an ice cream soda or something?
No, why thank you, I would.
They're so expensive.
No, don't think of it like that. Think of it like we're celebrating our election as Secretary and Treasurer. Do you know what else I'm celebrating?
No.
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who tells me all the things that I need to know.
George, please, don't think like that. I don't know why I said it. It's not true.
You say you were watching me when I did everything. I was doing the same about you all the time. Why, sure. I always thought that you were one of the cheap people I thought about. I always made sure when you were sitting on the bleachers and who you were with, and for 3 days now I've been trying to walk home with you. But there's always something in the way. Yesterday I was standing against the wall waiting for you, and you walked home with Miss Kokorin.
George, life's awfully funny. How could I have known that?
Listen, Emily, I'm going to tell you why I thought I'm not going to agricultural school. I think that once you found a person that you're very fond of, a person who's fond of you too, and likes you enough to be interested in your character, well, I think that's just as important as college is, and even more so. That's what I think.
Well, I think that's awfully important too.
Emily?
Yes, George?
Emily, if I do improve and make a big change, could you be?
I am now. I've always been.
So I guess this is an important talk we're having.
Yes.
Wait just a minute and I'll walk home with you.
There are a lot of things to be said about a wedding. In this wedding, I play the minister. That gives me the right to say a few more things about it. For now, the play gets pretty serious. This is a good wedding, but most people are so put together that even at a good wedding, there is a lot of confusion way down, deep in people's minds, and we thought that we ought to put it in our play too.
Papa, I don't want to get married.
Shh, Emily, everything's gonna be okay.
Why can't I just stay a little longer?
No, Emily. Now stop and think a minute.
But Papa...
I'm giving away my daughter, George. Do you think you could take care of her?
I really want to. I love you, Emily.
If you love me, help me. All I want is somebody to love me.
I will, Emily. I'll try.
Do you, George, take this woman, Emily, to be your wedded wife to have and to hold in sickness and in health?
I do.
Do you, Emily, take this man, George, to be your wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health?
I do. With this ring, I be wed.
With this ring, I be wed.
Yeah, baby, we're married!
That's all for the second act. Aren't they a lovely couple? Oh, I've never been to such a nice wedding. I'm sure they'll be happy. I always say, happiness, that's a great thing. The important thing is to be happy. Every once in 1,000 times, it's interesting.